I teach occasionally at craft schools. The Haystack School in Maine has these giant boulders sitting on the property, and I learned that they're errāticus. There is the technical name, the glacial erratic. And I just got really enthralled with this idea that these boulders that can weigh hundreds of tons could be transported by a glacier over thousands of years, and then one day as the glacier melts out from under it, it drops onto this site that's completely foreign to its original origin. And yet, this happened tens of thousands of years ago, so the erratic is somewhat part of that landscape and at the same time completely virgin to it. I guess I made my first erratic while teaching there some 15 years ago or so. It's a system I'm still using now. In this case, where I'm trying to reproduce this boulder shape, but of course not really make a boulder. So the idea was I would start with one shape. I would just draw a shape and cut it out and curve it up a little, and then I would make another shape that matched one edge of the first one, and then a third piece that matched those two edges, and so on and on. And what I loved about that process was that it would grow organically, where my involvement was complete in the beginning, that I conceived of that first shape, but as I got further and further into it, my involvement would back out, and by the end, essentially the piece is determining itself. For a long time, I only made them this big, and more recently I've made some bigger-ish ones, but the one that we're tackling is really on par with the scale of those original erratics that I was first introduced to. That's, it's the size of a bus, essentially. I was visiting Providence, Rhode Island years ago, and they were replacing the old water tower that had the wood trestle, very old one. I stopped to the side of the road and watched these guys and realized there were two men working this job at that time. And they were about halfway up of making the orb, and they had constructed a central crane system that allowed them to pick up the pieces of metal, big curved pieces, and be able to lift them into place. And then these two guys were just welding these pieces in. And I sat and watched them for a while, and I kind of had this epiphany that if you reduced it to units, you could build as big as you wanted as long as you had enough units. And you could determine that unit by what you could manage. It seems kind of silly to say it, but it was like the whole world blew open for me at that time, because I was like, I can be unlimited by that. The steel that I'm using is about 93% recycled. It's interesting to imagine what that has been before this, and that it has that marker of that history. So in a real sense, that is very much like the erratic, that the material itself is on this kind of journey, that it was dug out of the ground however long ago, and now is going through various incarnations. we're talking about a collection of curved surfaces, and on any of those sides, it will seek out that point of balance. So as large as this is, there is a single point that it wants to rest on. And that's just some really good stuff. Because it's of an asymmetrical shape, it can look as if it wants to list one way or the other, but in reality it just wants to be right there. And I think I take some delight in knowing that it's not by my construction. I'm not creating an illusion, I'm not mastering this element in any way, it just is, in spite of me. I think anytime you can kind of back away and allow something like that to happen is just gravy, because then I'm just like everyone else. I'm waiting to see where that happens. And so it's a little carrot, to explore. And I think relinquishing that control is important.